Welcome to the Darkstream, Voxday, voxday.net, and unauthorized.tv. It's Saturday night. We're a little bit early, but that's okay. I'm told the audio is good, the video is good. D-Live chat's rolling. There's already 10 people in the unauthorized chat, and the super chats are live. So tonight I'm going to address something that I popped up on the blog just a bit ago. It's from a discussion that took place at AC's site. And I think it's useful because it highlights one of the fundamental divisions among people of generally good faith, people who are generally on the right side. And it's something that I'm particularly drawn to because my best friend is somebody who is always inclined to be the skeptic when it comes to identifying evil in others. You know, he's kind of hesitant to do that. Crypto Degen sends the first super chat. Thank you. I'm not sure what that means, but I appreciate it. And so without further ado, let me read what this particular individual had to say. And this is, pretty typical of the Carl Denninger position. The pretty common conservative position. And I hesitate to say it's due to a desire to minimize evil. But I think, oh, I see, it's a salute. Okay. Well, thanks for that, Crypto DJ. I hesitate to say that it's out of a desire to minimize evil or to cover for evil. I think it actually has to do more with just a desire to not accept that the world is evil as it appears to be. But I could be wrong. Anyhow, here's what this was within the context of a larger discussion over Disney and its repeated decisions to produce stuff that destroys its IP, destroys its profits, lowers its revenues, lowers its market cap, hurts its stock price, again and again and again and again, against common sense. The Synonymous says, of course it's deliberate sabotage. Cabal has always hated Disney. They need his legacy completely removed from the minds of Americans. Vox Day believes this somehow renders materialism and money motivation is irrelevant, and pulls spiritual wickedness out of his butt as a reason to understand all of this. Yep, money doesn't motivate Cabal at all, just spiritual wickedness which he can neither define nor explain. An astounding expert at missing the obvious and fabricating ghost stories to explain the motion of the world, he doesn't seem to understand the value of cultural legacies and values, and can't in any way conceive that greed is driving all of this. It's the greed of control. Cabal isn't after a few cheap ticket or lunchbox sales. They want everything we have. And that begins with completely lobotomizing us and removing us from our cultural legacy so that we can become compliant little podlings who own nothing and are happy. VD can't see the obvious greed, the greed to control the entire world and wipe out any potential opposition. He can't see that Cabal is interested in taking everything you have and making sure that no remaining humans are able to resist or even survive on their own. Wiping out the legacy of people like Walt Disney is part of our ongoing cultural lobotomization, a move of harsh implications. And yet conservatives gleefully cheer on the destruction of our legacy, and guys like VD do their best to obscure the reality of what's going on by insisting that it's not unimaginably ferocious greed, but instead best explained by old ghost stories. I'll provide a more substantive, detailed response to that here tonight, but let me read you what the responses were from me and some others. It was interesting to see that literally nobody bought it. None of the other commentators agreed with this guy at all. So the first one says, "Tell me you are atheist without saying you are atheist." That's really all the response it required, rhetoric for rhetoric. But the next one says, "You don't understand Vox," which is certainly true. My response that I posted there, and like I said, we'll get more into it because I think there's some interesting things to look at with regards to that original comment. But it says, first, it's the old ghost stories that define greed as evil, and the love of money being the root of evil. So you're trying to set up a false dichotomy here. Without those old ghost stories, you have no rational basis for condemning either greed or control. Second, it is no problem to define and explain spiritual wickedness. It is the causal driving force between the material wickedness, which is conscious opposition to God, Jesus Christ, and nature. What you call cabal is merely the material opposition that serves the interests and commands of its supra-material masters. Third, the Disney legacy was destroyed when the infiltration was completed. Nothing can save Disney now. There is no point to supporting Disney's assaults on Christian European culture. Fourth, money motivation is non-existent to those who can create it ex nihilo. Money doesn't really exist today, as it's nothing more than promises made by faithless individuals and institutions. So that was my initial response. Obviously, you can see that there are some subtexts. I was, rather than attempting to explain in detail, which nobody's going to read in a comment, I just wanted to point people to thinking in the right directions. Farce Sensitive, who generally is a critic of mine, especially when it comes to China, but in this case, we happen to agree. He says, they don't need money, they print money, and they steal more money than you could imagine. It's about power, evil, and destruction. He's absolutely right. No question. And then another response says, get out of here with your shallow atheism. Greed is the base motivator for humans, as also is lust, ambition, power, revenge. But the supernatural world influences humans, and it plays the long game. Throughout time, mankind has pursued its short-term carnal desires. But there are evil spiritual forces guiding and shaping these behaviors and energies so as to set in play events that will cause the greatest amount of destruction to mankind, physically and spiritually. Destroy beauty, destroy hope, destroy how people connect to God. Increase alienation, increase isolation, break bonds of family, community, even the sense of self, and a greater harvest of those who will be damned and have their potential denied is possible. It's much bigger than you think it is, and it's been going on for millennia. They know they will lose, and they want to take out as many of us as they can. And then the last comment says, if you're a shill, LOL, nice try. If you're not a shill, you need to engage in deeper thinking. Greed is only a minuscule variable in what's actually happening in the world right now. Jesus Christ is Lord. Start with the Bible. And I thought those were all excellent responses, from the shortest, most rhetorical ones to the more detailed ones that were addressing the points that the guy was raising. Now, Cactus Eater Bear says, tell me you wear a fedora. Caleb G sends the second super chant. Thank you. He says, just paying my retard away. I had no idea that was going to become a thing. But Caleb, ego te absolvo, the retard is gone. The Spider Bip says Scott Adams struggles with the concept too. Yeah, he absolutely does. And so, to a certain extent, do Mike Cernovich and increasingly less and less Stefan Molyneux. And the reason is very simple. If you don't accept the existence of the spiritual world, if you don't accept the reality that there is more going on than what you can explain in purely materialistic terms, if you limit yourself to what science accepts today, then you have no possibility of grasping the fullness of what's taking place. Now, I'm not saying that I grasp the fullness. I'm not saying anybody grasps the fullness. But in order to have any reasonable idea of what is taking place or why things have happened in the past, you need to at least be open to the possibility of spiritual influence. Hooten, you misunderstood. He says, it was very interesting AC went after Vox. Seems to me AC is shilling. No, that wasn't AC. That was just an anonymous comment. AC is anonymous conservative. He has a site. And he is probably the leading commentator online discussing the surveillance society in the United States. You know, he's pretty comprehensively and conclusively documented that the United States has a operation of comparable size and interference to the East German Stasi. And so, and there's a lot of stuff there. You know, how much of it is true, I have no idea, but he makes he's documented it pretty thoroughly, and I've certainly encountered things here and there that tend to support his thesis. But he's not the guy that was the original comment. That was just, all of the commenters, if they don't attach their name to it, it shows up as anonymous. So that was just a random anonymous commentator. And in fact, since you bring it up, let me point this out. I don't believe that it was a real comment. No, all you have to do is read the thing. It says anonymous. It doesn't say AC. So, but what's interesting here, let's go over this now, okay? So, of course it's deliberate sabotage. Okay, we agree on that. We agree on that. Cabal has always hated Disney. I have no idea about that. We know that the Jews hated Disney back in the day, and that Disney hated the Jews. Who fits where? Don't know. They need his legacy completely removed from the minds of Americans. Why? No, they don't. They're concerned with Jesus Christ, not Walt Disney. Think about this. I mean, let's just be realistic about this for a second. If they wanted to completely destroy the legacy of Disney, wouldn't they have changed the name of the company? Wouldn't it make more sense if you want to destroy the legacy of Walt Disney? Why would you keep the name? They could have changed the name 30 years ago. I mean, as Bargain Bear says, forget most people under 20, Most people under 40 don't even know that Walt Disney was a person. You know, and so that's the first indication that um, this this guy's analysis is off. If it is the current owners of Disney's objective to destroy the legacy of Walt Disney, then they should have, at the very least, changed the name of the company, changed the names of the park, erased Disney from the organization. It's not like we haven't seen that done before, right? So then Voxday believes this somehow renders the fact that they're trying to destroy Disney renders materialism and money motivation to be irrelevant. No, I think that it's obviously wrong. They're not completely changing the Snow White story, and they're not replacing the seven dwarves with the seven diversities and replacing Snow White with a Mexican tortilla chick because they want to make more money. They're not going to make more money. They're going to lose a lot of money. So I think that what renders materialism and money motivation not irrelevant, but obviously not applicable, is the fact that they keep doing the same sort of thing that keeps losing money and keeps driving people away. It can't be a money motivation. ETL sends a super chat. Thank you. He says, first live I've caught in forever. Apologies for my tardiness. You are forgiven. Reproba says, they like to wear things as a skin suit too, though, aka Ford Foundation. Exactly. And if they like to wear things as a skin suit, then obviously they're not trying to destroy the legacy. Right? There's no way. Venomous says they don't want to build, they want to invert. Precisely. They're attempting to wear things as a skin suit. They're attempting to transform and invert the legacy, not destroy it altogether. What would be the point? He pulls spiritual wickedness out of his butt as a reason to understand all this. No, it's not. I didn't invent the concept of spiritual wickedness. I am not anywhere nearly so arrogant as to imagine for a second that that's a concept that I have originated in any way, shape, or form. It's inherent to Christianity. Somebody pointed out earlier in the chat that the materialism explanation is a way for people to hang on to their atheism and avoid having to deal with the existence of evil. That's, I think, often true. What I find harder to understand is that you see good people, Christians and so forth, who also make that mistake. And I don't fully understand that particular desire. The constant desire to minimize, the constant, the people that believe that, all of history is an accident. History exists the way that it does because it just happened to, and nobody ever intended anything ever. It's just it's almost like this is a misleading term, but it's almost like an economic theory of history, which is that all history is just the self-interested interactions of all of the players. It's like a history as market, but that's obviously incorrect. We have a super chat here from Telecaster Bear Gagan. Excited to present Booster Patrol at the National Bear Fest, thanks to Cactus Eater Bear on vocals. Yeah, that's great. I'm delighted to hear that's taking place, and I hope it goes well. Um, so then he says, "Yep, money doesn't motivate Cabal at all. Just spiritual wickedness, which he can neither explain nor define." Well, obviously, I can and I do explain it, and the reason that I say specifically spiritual wickedness is that I am separating that and distinguishing it from mere material wickedness, which we can witness, which we engage in, hopefully not too much wickedness ourselves. Let me back up a second and explain. I use the term wickedness differently from evil because evil is when we don't do the will of God. Evil is when we sin. But there is a fundamental difference between when we sin because we put ourselves, because we want to do it, when we give in to temptation. There's a difference between that and wickedness, which is you are intentionally and actively choosing something, not because you want to do it, but because it is sinful. It's conscious and purposeful evil for the sake of evil. That's what wickedness is, in the context that I'm using it. I'm not. I'm just, and I'm not attempting to redefine the terms or expect anybody else to use them. It's just I find it useful to distinguish between evil as weakness, sin as weakness, and sin as active, conscious opposition to God. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that one is necessarily better in terms of either way you fall short of the glory of God and are guilty, but it has profound and very different implications for those who are opposing it. When somebody means well, wants to do what is right, but gives into temptation, then you can talk to them and help them. You cannot do that when someone is actively at war with God. They're two different, two fundamentally different mindsets. And that's why I think it's so important to distinguish between the two of them. And so there's hope for the people who engage in sin. Someone who sins is capable of repentance. Someone who is wicked has actively set themselves at war with God. They do not repent. They will not repent. And it's a totally different situation. Now, the difference between spiritual wickedness and material wickedness is human wickedness. It's the pride stuff. Pride is wicked in a way that some gay guy in the closet is not. Because it's the difference between doing what you know to be wrong because you are weak and declaring that what God claims to be wrong is actually good. It's the inversion. And that's why I always say that inversion is the stink of sulfur. If you're not sure if something's good or not, look and see if there's any inversion involved. In fact, I find it really interesting that even I read Yukio Mishima's Confessions of a Mask recently. And the mask that he's wearing is basically he's a gay guy who doesn't really realize he's gay, but he wears this mask of normalcy, and um, and it's from a Christian perspective. And Mishima, he's Japanese. He was thoroughly pagan, but he was conscious of Christianity because the girl in the book is actually a Christian, which is interesting. But the mask that he wears gradually transforms him from simply being evil to actually starting to become wicked. And what I found interesting about it is that he was of an age where where homosexuality was still referred to as inversion. Like he talks specifically about and refers to himself as the invert. And language is often a clue to deeper truths, which of course is why the perversion of language is one of the fundamental tools in the toolbox of the wicked. Telecaster Bear says, does it come down to the intention to spread evil to others? I don't think it necessarily comes down to that, but I do think that is one common theme. That's one common that's typically where you'll see the transformation from evil to wickedness. It comes to the proselytization to others. So, let's see. Umberkid says, how can you see the evils being committed against children and deny spiritual evil? Well, that's one of the reasons why people are so in denial about child sex trafficking and child sex abuse. Because, even though they've been indoctrinated to accept homosexuality and self-mutilation and all sort, fornication, immorality, etc., etc., even though they've been conditioned